It's the Fellowship of the Geek Show, a weekly podcast about comics, the comic book industry, and other geek pop culture. Music courtesy of Manny the Martyr. And now, on with the show!
Hey everybody, it's the Fellowship of the Geeks podcast. My name is Thomas Chick, and joining me for this episode is Mike Marlowe.
Hey gang.
Les Webster.
Hello all.
And unfortunately that is it for us this week. Liz could not make it, but we hope she will be joining us next week. So Liz, we miss you and hope you get better quick.
Yeah, what he said.
Yeah, whatever the heck I said.
By gum.
Ribby! Hope everybody out there is doing okay. So, what's been going on in your corner of the galaxy?
Well, I had an interesting weekend, I guess the last week. My thing here has nothing to do with comics, believe it or not. This is actually almost a weird little peek into the personal life. I know, and I only say that because it started out at work. But the deal is that November is at where I work. They do a big charity push in November, and so they're doing all kinds of stuff. And so we're getting down to the last week in November, so they were pushing hard, and so they had scrounged up a bunch of stuff to put together a raffle, to get people to come buy raffle tickets.
Okay.
So I went down there and I threw $20 in the thing and bought some raffle tickets and spread them out around some of the prizes, and I got drawn.
Woohoo!
I won. What I won was a pair of tickets to Sunday night's Mavericks game against the Clippers. So
that explains a lot.
Yep. They were damn near free. That's why I went. But it was fun. I took my kid. We had a lot of fun. It was fun to see what is so far shaping up to be a pretty mediocre Mavericks team actually play a pretty damn consistent game and beat a allegedly much better Clippers team. So it was exciting. The kid had a blast. He's real into basketball right now anyway, so
Cool.
He had fun. And it wasn't terrible, so, I don't know that we could afford to do it all the time, but because they were really nice seats. But, yeah, it was fun.
Well, I am impressed.
Oh, I am. I am too, because I saw your Mike knows I saw his post and made my comment about him being with the masses.
Oh, and Leslie practically hit the floor laughing when she read your comment. That was she cracked up.
And not only did I say that, I said I would have lost the bet.
Uh-huh. I don't do it much, but it was one of those deals where it kind of came out of nowhere on me. I was like, what the hell? Like I said, the kid will get a kick out of it. I'll bite the bullet and just do it. And it was fine.
Well, I'm glad y'all had a good time.
I am too.
And it's for a good cause, so there you go.
Yep, it was.
Very impressive.
I think the word you're looking for is lucky, but okay. Which, hey, I don't get it that often, so I'll take the luck where I can get it.
Alrighty.
Well, for me, I read a lot. Kind of bounced around. I read Volume 2 of Liberty Meadows. I read the DC Nuclear Winter issue, which is really good stuff.
Was it hot stuff?
Wahaha.
Wahaha.
And I started a book here of the worlds of Edgar Rice Burroughs, and it's various short stories by several authors. And they've got quite an impressive list for this, so I've been very pleased with what they've put out. And this spans almost all of Burroughs' heroes. So it's an interesting concept as to kind of a what if, and opens up for so many different authors, Mercedes Lackey, Mike Resnick, Peter David, Max Allan Collins, Joe R. Lansdale, among others.
Dang.
So I'm happy with this. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully I'm going to get deeper into it.
That's quite a list already.
Yep.
I think so too.
Very nice. Well, it's my week to have a big bag of nothing. Unfortunately, my
One of those weeks where the affairs of state take precedence over the affairs of state.
That's right. Unfortunately, I had other things I had to be dealing with and resolving and all that good stuff, so I'm falling a little further behind on my reading, but hopefully with...
being a grown-up sucks.
Mm-hmm. But hopefully things will calm down a little bit and I can catch up. I'm looking forward to that. I didn't say when it was going to happen.
Right.
I'm looking for it to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. You never know when it's going to happen. Shit.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know how long it'll last when it does either, but you know.
Well, nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition, too, so.
Yeah, I don't know why we're getting so damn philosophical over here tonight. Shit.
And it's early yet.
I know. God. Setting a bad precedent.
Alrighty, before we get into this week's discussion, I want to take a couple moments to thank the fine folks at Things from Another World for sponsoring the fellowship. What we highly suggest you do is go to our website. That is www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net and click on the Sponsors tab. And there you'll see a list of all the current deals that are being run by these fine folks. And as of this recording, it's just the evergreen deals, but I'm sure that's going to be changing here real soon because, hey, it's Christmas time. Now's the time to be having some nice deals and think about that special geek in your life. But if you're listening to this, then you're a geek. You need to start thinking about getting something for yourself for Christmas. So, amongst the deals are 40% off comic statues, toys, and merchandise, 30% off select pre-order manga titles, and 50% off Nicodem comics. As you see there on the page, there are some links that you can click on, or you just can click on the ad for Things from Another World. That'll take you to their website. Let them know that we sent you their way, and do some Christmas shopping for family and friends, and of course for yourself. And thank you, Things from Another World, for being a sponsor of the Fellowship of the Geeks. All right, this should be a fun episode. This year, and roughly about this time, 40 years ago, a little movie came out. A little movie came out. and it actually lived up to what the poster said. And the poster said, "You will believe a man could fly." And of course, I'm talking about Superman the movie. It came out December 14th was the official release in America. Such a great cast. The big names, of course, were Gene Hackman, Marlon Brando, Glenn Ford, even bit parts by Trevor Howard and Terrence Stamp, and Suzanne York. And then, of course, leading that was Christopher Reeve in the title role, and Margot Kidder. And it was a big hit, obviously, and still affects people to this day. There's people out there today that feel that Reeve is the best Superman ever. So I'm not gonna argue that. So I figured to honor this celebration that we would take some time to talk about this film, talk about the labor it took to get this film to the big screen, and we may spend some time with the franchise and go from there. So I will step back and let someone else take the floor. Who'd like to go first?
Well, I saw this on opening weekend. I took my little brother to this movie. He is 17 years my junior, so it was nice to watch this with a new set of eyes. The young boy did not really get into comic books, so taking him to see this was one of the highlights of my young adult life. He got to witness a movie about a superhero. And prior to this, I think about the only thing you really had were the late 30s, early 40s serials. So I embraced this when it came out. I thought this was fine work, well done, and yes, there's a huge story behind it, but it was just overall, this was one of the foremost movies, definitely of the time, and it was the front runner for decades to come. Superman became the gold standard that everyone else was trying to achieve, and rightfully so. It was an entertainment. It was something that had not been achieved before, and I thought that it was top notch. At the time, I would have recommended this to anybody and everybody. You've got to go see this movie, because to me, this had the similar effect as did Star Wars when it first came out. This was a genre movie that, to me, hit on all cylinders. And it's one of those that I will pull off the shelf and watch again. So sorry that I'm fawning, but I just love this movie. I know there were quirks, and there may have even been segments that you shake your head because the possibility. But I thought this was effectively done, and as a result, it branded the way for films to achieve later in the world of moviedom. Now I'll step off the soapbox.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with that. I agree this is an incredibly important episode in the saga of the comic book movie. And I agree, it is definitely a good enough movie that it doesn't need to be pigeonholed as a comic book movie. It's just a good movie. And I also agree wholeheartedly that Christopher Reeve he set the bar incredibly high for that role. Superman is a difficult character to pull off, I think, because at least in a solo movie, because that whole Boy Scout thing it's hard, it doesn't lend itself to a lot of character depth. That said, I think Christopher Reeve did a really nice job over this movie and the sequel, in giving Superman depth. He was just that good an actor, and he somehow found that character inside himself and put it out there on the screen, and it worked brilliantly. And I mean, it's clearly he set a bar so high that even DC in 40 years has not been able to get anywhere close to it. I mean, don't get me wrong, there've been some decent Batman movies, but they've not pulled off Superman ever since. And I think there are very few people who would argue with me on that. Not the way Christopher Reeve did it. I did not see this movie when it came out, but I was still a pretty little kid when I saw it. And yeah, it was. I mean, I was probably young enough that I didn't need to be, or that I wasn't accustomed to watching long movies like this. I mean, it's not a massively long movie, but for I don't know, maybe 10-year-old kid, it's a long movie. So there were parts that my 10-year-old brain thought were boring. That's now you watch it and it's the backstory, and you kind of have to watch it, and it doesn't make sense too much if you don't. But like I said, 10-year-old brain. But even then, I was impressed. It was a very cool movie. There were a lot of varied elements to it that made it. I think that part of why it appealed to such a wide audience is because there's little bits of lots of different types of movies. There's the whole superhero thing, the whole Boy Scout good guy hero ideal. There's a little bit of science fiction. There's more than a little bit of romance. Lots of action. It's got a broad base of stuff to draw from to appeal to a wide audience, and it just works. I mean, for as much effort as was put into it, it's a well put together movie.
I agree. The thing about Christopher Reeve's role, his performance, is he made it as believable as it could be. If you think about it, the whole, oh golly shucks, I mean, literally the farm boy from Kansas in in the big city, and not only is he in the big city, he also has all these remarkable powers, and he pulls it off wonderful. He's also helped with a supporting cast that was great as well. A story that was well told, and just some amazing work behind the scenes to make everything look as believable as it could be for back in mid late 70s. Something I had never even thought of until I got like one of the anniversary discs, DVDs a while back. The whole sequence of the end of Superman and Lois's interview, quote unquote, which includes them flying around Metropolis and all that. Never even thought about it. Never even thought about this whole thing. And I was there when it first came out, maybe not opening weekend, but pretty soon after that, as a kid watching this. The whole sequence where Superman's on a ledge and wishes Lois goodnight and flies off, and then immediately there's a knock on the door, and there's Clark. I never realized that the Christopher Reeve that we were seeing in the suit was actually film that was being projected. That had been filmed earlier, and it was put up and showing him fly off. So obviously, so Chris could be over on stage left or whatever it is, it dressed up as Clark and then knocking on the door and then doing his lines. It never even dawned on me that's how they accomplished it. But you still look at it and you don't. I mean, you just take it for granted. He just flew around and got into his Clark clothes, and he's ready to show her the time of life by getting hamburgers. It just worked. It really did.
The farm boy all shucks attitude was really shown in that scene you were just speaking of, when he was waiting for Lois, and he straightened up into his Superman stature. The minute she walked back in, he was down again as a milquetoast.
He dropped the shoulders. He stooped over a little bit, changed his voice. He was the first actor to do. Well, he's the first live action actor to do that.
Yes.
I don't remember who, and you'll. I know you'll tell me. The actor who did the Fleischer cartoons, he did that, because I distinctly remember scenes where he goes, "This is a job for Superman." I mean, the voice immediately drops.
Yeah.
When it's like, okay, it's down. I need to do something. But
Yeah, and I sure don't remember George Reeves doing that in the TV show in the 50s.
Oh God, no. No.
Nope.
I don't think Kirk Allen did it either in the serials. But, him doing that, it made it a little bit more plausible why people could not figure out, oh God, he looks just like Superman. He's just wearing glasses. No, because he's acting different. He's made himself shorter, and it was just he obviously thought about it and said, hey, I need to do something. I need to do something to make this actually work, and it did work.
Yeah, the funny thing is that honestly, what he's doing as an actor is he's hamming it up. But the deal is he does it perfectly. He does it to just the right level. He turns up the ham intensity just enough to make it to give that appearance of being someone really different. It's I mean he embraced the idea that it's two very different roles that he's playing. He's playing Clark Kent and he's playing Superman.
Yeah.
And you've got to walk into that going, okay, how are they different? And I need to exaggerate that a little bit. It needs to be really obvious visually, not just in the words, not just in the dialogue. It's got to be visually obvious. And he jumped right into it and nailed it. And that's a huge part of the stuff that hasn't worked since then, is that none of the other actors who have put on the suit have done that the same way. That's part of that setting the bar too high thing.
Yeah. Well, the closest one who's done it is Brendan Routh, because they basically wanted him to play Christopher Reeve playing Superman in Superman Returns,
Right.
which I thought was kind of a shitty thing to do to Brandon. It didn't give him a chance to do something with the character. Now,
Right.
whether
and unfortunately, he also, I mean, okay, my opinion. I'll throw that disclaimer in here. He didn't
Right.
do a particularly good job of it either. I thought he did the Superman part fairly well. I don't think he played Clark Kent particularly well at all. And I think the deal was he wasn't. I mean, he didn't ham it up as much as Reeve did.
right,
And he didn't play the differences the same way, and it just so it. I mean, I only saw the movie once when it came out, and I don't remember it that well, but because it was mostly forgettable, unfortunately. But yeah, it just didn't work the same way mainly because he wasn't playing his own role. Like
Right.
you said, that's a hard thing to do, and unfortunately, they had done the same thing with Kevin Spacey as Lex Luthor. They wanted him to play Gene Hackman, and who the hell can do that? God.
right.
Not go out on a limb like that, like Hackman did too. Because to me, that's exactly what he proposed and pulled off. He was able to give you that feeling that he was in control, yet he was kind of an idiot while he was doing it.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to see a more competent Lex Luthor in the movie, I think. Not to say, and it's actually kind of not fair, because Hackman playing Luthor did, I mean, I think he did play him straight. And I mean, I think he played the villain part of it fairly well, but I mean, there was somebody that smart and that, for lack of a better term, evil, really would have surrounded himself with better people.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just no reason. There's just kind of no excuse for that. And that's kind of where I think that fails in that movie, is that there's just no reason for Luthor to be completely reliant on this one bumbling idiot. No offense, Ned Beatty. But, I mean, he's just playing the role he's given. And
Right.
doing that role really well, honestly. I mean, Ned Beatty does as well in this movie as anybody, but it's a terrible role. It shouldn't have been there in the first place. And I don't know. I think it hampered Hackman a little bit.
Yeah, you hit on one of my sore spot. Frankly, probably my only sore spot of the film is the handling of the Luthor character, and it's not because of Hackman's performance. It's basically the writing, the handling of the character of being this villain who's basically obsessed with real estate. Essentially, this is what we're basically being told. and see Superman as his ultimate test. And I'm just going, this is the gentleman who wrote this. Now, granted, I'm not going to give him total blame because it went through other hands before we got to the final product.
Holy cats, did it go through a lot of hands?
Yes,
but yeah.
But this, Mario Puzo gave us The Godfather, so I'm kind of surprised that he didn't take and who knows what kind of influence the studios had, but more of a crime boss or kind of like the Luthor that we have seen since then. The intelligent, the very intelligent, the inventor, the entrepreneur, but does shady things and does it well enough to cover his tracks, and that kind of thing, so no one can touch him, that kind of thing. And it would have been interesting to see Hackman play that version of Luthor, and I think he would have done well. But you're right. Someone so incredibly intelligent and all that have his right hand man be this guy, and then you have Miss Tessmacher on the other side, a little bit smarter, but clearly there for her looks. That kind of thing.
Right, and it gives Luthor a sense of it gives them an air of just self-indulgent incompetence, which you have to question whether Mario Puzo had any idea what he was getting into when he took this job, because he clearly didn't understand Lex Luthor as a character. I mean, he had a pretty good damn handle on Superman. I'll give him that.
Yeah.
Clearly did not understand Lex Luthor, because when the hell was Lex Luthor ever interested in real estate? As obsessively as he seemed to be.
Right.
He had a whole lot of other stuff going on, and if he was going to bother with something that elaborate in regards to real estate, he would have probably delegated it and had a group of other people dealing with something like that while he's doing something important.
Mm-hmm.
It just doesn't make sense to me. But anyway.
And it's almost like, and like I said, I don't want to pile up on him because it went through several hands to get to the final product. But it's like no one did any research. From the get-go, from Luthor's first appearance, he was a scientist. And you kind of figured they would have gone something a little bit more that way. It just a really big missed opportunity.
Yeah,
but,
and by the time we get to the second movie, he seems to be little more than a real estate agent. Let alone a supervillain.
Right.
It's as inconsistent and unsatisfying as he is in the first movie. He's downright laughable in the second one. But we haven't gotten that far yet.
Mm. Well, there's an interesting story about all of that, but I'm sure we'll eventually get to that too. We kind of hit on it a little bit of how crazy the story went from being picked up, or the initial process of trying to start the film back in '73 to actually hitting the screen late December, mid-December '78. Just seeing some of the names they went through on the writing process. Lee Brackett was looked at one time.
William Goldman.
Yeah, who recently passed away. Sundance, Butch and Sundance, and then All the President's Men. So he had recent success.
Right, big success.
Big success.
Not like little success. Those are both huge movies.
Mm-hmm. And then just some of the names that they looked at to direct the film. I'm not sure what a Sam Peckinpah Superman film would have been.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that either.
Yeah, I wonder about the rating of that one.
Yeah, the body count would be interesting, to say the least. But, I mean, Coppola, Friedkin.
We had mentioned it in pre-show. Lucas turned it down because he was busy with Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And Steven Spielberg turned it down because he was working on Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah, by the time they got to him.
But I mean, his name had been mentioned before. But at that time, they were going, "Oh, well, let's see how that big shark movie he does. He's working on. Let's see how that does before we seriously consider him." And of course, talk about Jaws, and yeah, it did okay.
To put it mildly, yes. Yeah, it's amazing how, and I mean, I kind of wonder if this is maybe a little bit of how Hollywood actually worked back in that time in the mid '70s. I suspect that there is something to that. I think maybe this happened more than we know about most movies, but I mean, this being essentially a geek movie. I mean, we're the types of people who we like to know the whole history, and so once you start digging and getting all these details going on, it sounds crazy, but I wouldn't be entirely surprised if it wasn't that unusual, really, for stuff to go through several writers and for just a massive list of potential directors to be considered. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of huge names, but I suspect that it's not so crazy. I mean, I think once you get to the casting, maybe that's a little excessive, but the writers and directors, yeah, they had a lot of candidates, but I mean, how many of them were really serious candidates? Like you said, a Sam Peckinpah Superman, find that hard to believe that was ever really seriously considered.
Yeah, that was probably a name just thrown out just for sake of throwing out.
And I'm sure that, and I mean, as I said, this thing I'm reading says they met with him, but I bet they met with a lot of people,
right?
That they weren't serious about, and it makes for a great story.
Now the sequels, you've already spoken a little bit of, and I look at Hackman's Luther, and yes, the first one was an establishment of the character, and then in 2 and 4, he was a comic book. He was, even my mother would say it was a funny book. The character had no depth. He was as bumbling as Otis. He was not the ingenious, but he was clever. The character that was shown was more clever than it was in the first one. The way that Hackman first met with the Phantom Zone criminals and just kind of said, "You think you're in charge here, but I can give you exactly what you want." Therefore, he was taking the attitude that he was in charge. And that was in 2. Now in 4, forget it. But I was
Forget what?
Forget 4 from what I've been told, but yeah.
Please, yes. Although that was Reeves' baby. It was, to me, was not all that good. But I would say that 2 was fairly solid. 3 was a trash. But I'd go back to it. It was stellar as to what they were able to perform on this one. And I wish they could have iterated that with the sequels, but they never were able to touch it.
Well, and they shot 1 and 2 at the same time, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, that's what
Yes.
I was about to get to, and I think that's part of the reason why 2 was so successful is a lot of it was being shot at the same time. The story was, and I highly recommend everybody out there to check out Superman 2: The Donner Cut if you've not seen that version. I would definitely do that, and I would definitely listen to the commentary. Because the story is Richard Donner was supposed to direct 1 and 2, and got behind, so they shut down directing number 2 to focus on number 1, which of course was a smart thing to do. But at the time, the Salkinds and Donner were kind of butting heads, so once they were finished with the film and it was out and all of that, they fired Richard Donner and brought in Richard Lester, and basically did a lot of rewrites and a lot of reshoots. The footage, the scenes that Hackman was in as Luthor were all stuff that was filmed by Donner, and the story is Hackman was already moved on to other projects and was upset about the handling of the firing, that he would not come back. He would not come back and do any of these reshoots. And so there was a lot of changes. And then they brought Lester back to do 3. And yeah, Superman 3, it's not a Superman film. It's a Richard Pryor vehicle that just happens to have Superman in it. Let's be honest here.
Yeah, entirely. I agree wholeheartedly. But just as a little bit of a side note, I think as a Richard Pryor vehicle, it's actually pretty good. As a Superman movie, it's terrible. As a Superman movie, it's terrible. But Richard Pryor's hilarious. I mean, I'm a fan. I'm not gonna lie.
Right.
Was he much of an actor? No, but he was a funny dude, and his role in that was really well written for him,
Mm-hmm.
and it works. It has absolutely no place in a Superman movie, and as such, the movie kind of sucks. But anyway, that's my side trip.
Oh, no, I totally agree. If they wanted to kind of go that way, to have him in there and being the funny guy and all that, it should have been toned down. But you're not going to do that, because he was. I almost made a hot as hell reference there, but that was about the time he also burned himself, so that's probably inappropriate. But he was anything he touched was gold during that time. So you're not going to cut him. You're not going to cut out scenes for him. You want to do more, because that's going to draw people to the theater, because you got him.
But unfortunately, that doesn't leave much room for the Superman part of the story.
Right. No, I totally agree.
And yeah, and Yeah. It just doesn't really work because of that. The movie is way too skewed towards this guy who's working for the bad guys, and the plot is a little convoluted, and there's
A little.
yeah, a little convoluted, just a bit. And while there's possibly some interesting stuff going on in it, it just doesn't mesh together at all. It's just weird. But anyway.
The problem with 4,
Was that there was a 4, but
well, the only reason they got Christopher Reeve back, because he didn't want to do it anymore, is if he had a say in the script. Because he wanted to send a message, and the message was anti-nuclear weapons. Noble sentiment. It's the story in itself was a decent story. It was when it got to the script form and all the lapse in not only movie logic but real world logic, and plus the fact that this film was not being produced by the Salkins. It was produced by Golan Globus, the Cannon Group, notorious for doing things on the cheap, and it showed big time. So you had a cheap version of Superman up there, and it was just horrible. And yes, that basically killed the franchise. If they had a few more passes through the script to fix some of the issues, like the fact that Superman, and I don't even remember what the villain was, the one that had the powers, are flying around the world, because his powers were based on the sun as well. So once he gets away from the sun, he actually kind of depowers. So they're literally flying around the world, and you're seeing all these, you're seeing the Eiffel Tower, you're seeing the pyramids, you're seeing all this. And of course, it's high noon in all these locations. You're just going, that is not possible. It's just a lot of lapse of logic. The heart was in the right place to the degree. The execution was just horrible.
Okay, and if you're not familiar with Cannon films, and you want to get a sense of the kind of stuff, there's a documentary that came out back in 2014, and it is called Electric Boogaloo: The Wild Untold Story of Cannon Films. It is an absolute hoot of a documentary, and Superman 4 gets mentioned in it a little bit. But yeah, it talks. I mean, it gives you a great sense of the kind of stuff that they did, and why, and it won't take you long to figure out why it was so bad a fit for Superman. But anyway, that's another side thing, another bit of a tangent. But it's actually a really good documentary.
Yeah, I'm interested now.
Yeah, I saw it maybe a year ago. I'm not sure. I forget where. It might have been on. It was on one of the services. It was Netflix or Amazon Prime. I couldn't tell you which off the top of my head, but it was on one of them. But yeah, Electric Boogaloo.
Definitely have to check that out. And like I said, that essentially killed off the franchise. Plus the fact that Chris, if you think about it, Superman 4, mid-late 80s, so he's been doing this for about 10 years. Just didn't want to do it anymore, and I understand, and totally understand that.
Yep.
It just kind of wish it had been a better swan song.
Well, yeah,
But
kinda.
you can't always
Get what you want.
Yep, exactly.
Little Rolling Stones for you folks out there.
hmm And one thing we have yet to mention that certainly needs to be brought up. We've talked about everything else. We talked about the writing. We talked about the casting. We talked about the special effects and all of that. The music. The music is so perfect for the film.
It's hard to argue with John Williams. It really is.
Yeah.
You can't. I mean, you kind of can't go wrong there.
I remember you had already mentioned Superman Returns earlier. I remember it may have been opening weekend to see that film. Because I was curious. I was curious to see how this went. And when the lights went down and you start hearing that theme song, I shed a tear. I was like, I was never going to hear this song, this music, in a theater again unless it was a re-release or something like that. And not only did I shed a tear, I shaked a little bit. I was just like, oh my God. Because it's wonderful music. And it's one of those you gotta, if you're going to listen to it on its own, you need to have the best sound system. Because you're going to miss so much if you don't. I remember Donner's commentary. I don't remember if it was on the first one or his version of Superman 2. He talked about Williams' music. I mean, it's like, the music even says it's a Superman film. It's Superman. It's like, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah.
Uh-huh. It's pretty iconic, really. I mean, you hear that and you don't have to necessarily be a fan of the movie to recognize that. I mean, is it as iconic as the Star Wars theme? Maybe not, but it's not that far off, really.
Right.
I mean, that's what John Williams is known for, is that there's an iconic sound there, and that's what he does.
And it's not just the main theme. It's Lois's theme. I'm thinking in particular the scene where it's after Jonathan Kent had passed away and Clark realizes that he needs to leave to basically fulfill his destiny, and he's out in the field, and here comes Mom. He tells her he's going to leave, and of course they hug, and the camera kind of pans around, and you hear this music, and it's such a soaring music. It was so appropriate. It was I don't mean to, he literally hit all the right notes.
Yep. And that's what a really, really good film composer can do. It adds an emotional layer to it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, John Williams is just really, really good at that.
Right. The music is supposed to be there to enhance the experience.
Exactly.
But it could be a detriment to the experience if it's not handled the right way.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's part of I think that's one of your biggest problem about 80 films is the music.
It's a factor. Not gonna lie, it's a factor. The 80s, everybody got into that whole soulless synthesizer thing,
Mm-hmm.
And, oh my God, it nearly destroyed so many iconic 70s bands. And it's just, yeah. And just everybody had to be doing it. And it didn't make sense to me in the 80s. But I don't know. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole again. Not right now, anyway.
Right.
Go down that rabbit hole later. I don't want to interrupt Superman for that.
Your thoughts, Les?
Well, I'm going to take a different take. Now, yes, I agree with the music, but I want to do a different take as to one movie in particular that was not based on Superman, but it had a iconic moment. That was Iron Giant. The scene where the Iron Giant was about to blast off into the air to deter the atomic missile that was about to come down on the town. Because as he's flying, he takes a Superman pose and says, Superman, and then hits the atomic warhead. That, to me, was, when I saw that movie, I automatically thought of the Donner films, the Christopher Reeve Superman, because that was, to me, that's what they were stretching for. That's what they were looking for.
Right, that's the image that they're trying to invoke.
Yes.
With that, absolutely.
And the movie Superman has influenced a lot of other films. Obviously, superhero films, because it was essentially the first. And then all of a sudden you had a spate of characters coming out. Everything, Iron Man, Captain America, Batman, Wonder Woman, Howard the Duck, Blade.
Wow, did he just mention Howard the Duck?
He did.
Shame on you. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm lowering my head in shame. But it influenced so many other titles, so many other films. It being the first, it definitely set a pattern. Not just a bar, but a pattern of both films and of viewers. Viewers now had a specific wish to watch certain things. So to me it is the top thing right now. It is still, if you had the 100 best superhero movies, that's going to be it there. That's going to be number one. And if it's not number one, it's number two.
I agree. In terms of superhero films, I'm not sure. If you had to ask me, put a gun to my head, said which is my favorite, I would have a hard time picking between this and the first Captain America, the first Chris Evans Captain America, because there's a lot of similarities. Has the right spirit, really good story, casting was literally perfect, and we just mentioned music. The music in Captain America is awesome too. it's both of them. I couldn't pick between the two.
Yeah, that's another one that hits all the right nerves in terms of movie,
Hmm.
in terms of all the stuff that you kind of have to have a really successful movie. The action and suspense and story and a little bit of romance. Yep, it's all there.
But see, I'm going to get off track. I've got to say number 2 is Batman with Michael Keaton, because it was Superman with a darker edge, and and yes, that one had flaws out the wazoo, but it, to me, helped set a standard for that sort of genre. And I'm looking at that sort as in non-powered superheroes. We're going to have a spate of those coming up too. And yet, I think it set a standard.
Oh, it certainly did. It might be a little cliche to say it breathed new life into the Batman character, but I think in a way it did. It certainly it it brought a nice balance of some of the really dark stuff that had been going on in the 80s in the books with Batman, and balanced it out with just kind of I don't know, a sense of fun in a way. I mean, yeah, okay, a dark way, sure, because well, this is me we're talking about, but I think that movie is I think it's more fun than most people would probably give it credit for. Just in terms of the way the character is handled, the way Joker is handled to an extent. I mean, say what you want about Nicholson, but he really did seem to be having fun.
That's true.
I mean, how much story was really involved in that? We can leave alone, because I don't really think there was a whole lot. But I mean, it also kind of didn't matter, because it was more. I think the success of that movie was more. It sounds bad, but I think it was more in terms of style than anything else. I think it set a precedent for some of the stuff stylistically that made Batman really get successful in the 90s. I mean, honestly,
Okay.
it fed the animated series a whole lot, and I think that was a huge thing. I mean, the Batman animated series drove Batman back into the spotlight, made him more popular than he would have been just in the comics. And I think Burton's Batman went a long way towards that. It set the precedent for that. But anyway, we're talking about Superman, aren't we?
Yes. Sorry.
We're-
Now, I got us off track, so I apologize.
yeah, right. At this particular moment, we're doing a terrible job of talking about Superman, but it's still the important part there is, yes, these are all prime examples of what a superhero movie can be when it, in its own way, forgets that it's a superhero movie and just becomes a movie, and happens to be a pretty darn good list so far, to be honest. The ones we're naming here as comparative, these are all good movies, whether they're superhero movies or not. And that's how things break out. That's how genre stuff stops being genre stuff. Is it has to essentially be good enough to make people forget that it's genre. And that's when shit hits the mainstream.
Okay. Really good talk. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up and take a quick break?
Spoilers. We may spoil this Superman movie thing. I don't know.
Okay. Go ahead.
No, I mean, we already did.
Oh, okay.
I mean, in terms of we forgot to say that at the beginning. But, yeah, we're talking about a movie. We're talking about a 40-year-old movie. I mean, hard
well,
to expect
he obviously survives the movies because he made it through the sequels, so.
He did. And, hey, in the comics, even when he didn't survive, he still survived, so it's all right.
That's true.
But, yeah, it's a dang good movie.
Really, really powerful film. Congratulations to all. Happy anniversary to all that were involved with this. I'm sure they're really proud of what they did, and it still impacts people to this day and influences people to this day. Mm-hmm. Like I said, there's people who believe Reeve is the Superman. He is the Superman actor. It's no knock to anyone else. It just they think he happens to be the best, and I have a hard time trying to argue against that. I mean, I thought he did a great performance. I think there's been some nice performances since there, but it's a very high bar.
Mm-hmm. It is.
So, on that note, we are going to take a break and come back with our weekly picks. And we are back. It is time for our weekly picks, and leading off is Mike.
I'm leading off this week, so my first pick is a Dynamite book, and this is one I heard about not long ago, and I was like, I gotta know what this is. I couldn't. I have to say something about this. So this is another one of Dynamite's fun little crossover books series. And this time we have Vampirella versus Reanimator. This is issue number 1. This is it would be way too cliche to say this is a match made in hell, but man, I can't not be just mesmerized by the concept, because it does make a lot of sense. I mean, we talked about Vampirella before. That's a character that's been around for a good 50 years now. If you're not familiar with Reanimator, that would be a Lovecraft creation. So he's been around even longer. The 80s movies notwithstanding, even those are actually kind of fun in their own way. But so yeah, I mean, to see those two going at it for pretty much any reason would be fun. The idea that West is attempting to awaken some sort of Aztec god, and Vampirella needs to stop him. All right. And the cherry on top of this one, yes, I'm rambling a little bit about it, but the cherry on top about this one is it is written by Cullen Bunn. So, I'm in.
Woohoo!
As am I. I think the section that they were saying, could they have met before, I think is kind of interesting. Let's see how that plays out now.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Yep. Sounds cool. All right. I am next. And for my first pick, I'm going with Boom Studios. And this is a one-shot called Planet of the Apes, Simian Age. And this is just a series of stories that take place in both the original film franchise and then in the new franchise as a celebration of the film's 50th anniversary. Really looks cool from what I've seen. Some of the stories are going to focus on some of the characters that didn't have a lot of attention to it, so it should be kind of interesting. And I've been enjoying Boom's Apes material for several years now, even before the whole reboot, reimagination. The original the stuff from before was really good too. So I don't expect anything less.
Sweet.
Yeah, they've been real strong with good representation. Their stories are solid.
Yeah, and it's nice that they're actually kind of acknowledging both versions. That's kind of cool that they're doing that. Because I mean, the more recent, most of the recent stuff has been for the current run, but they've thrown out some miniseries that were tied to the original. The one right off the top of my head is the Ursus, General Ursus miniseries, which I believe was written by David Walker. So they acknowledged both film versions, which is nice. That way you're taking care of, you're taking care of all the fans.
Right. Yeah, and that's actually not something that gets done a lot either. So it's kind of cool that they're doing that.
Yep. Alrighty, Les.
My first choice is based on a character that had the follow-up stories in Exit Stage Left, the Snagglepuss Chronicles, here just recently. And it's the story of Tanya Lightfoot, who grew up in Appalachia and was kind of a prankster. That's because she was a small Sasquatch. This is Sasquatch Detective number 1, which tells you the story of Tanya and her early life, which is included in this as a 30-page story. And then add to that, you have the stories that were in the Snagglepuss Chronicles. So you're looking at, 40, 48 pages, I would say. And I'm interested in this because I did read the Exit Stage Left, and I enjoyed these little stories about the detective. She is considered the most decorated detective, yet she has abilities that others don't really, they can't even aspire to. So this should be a fun read, and after reading the small fillers, I think that this will be a real strong show to go through.
Interesting. You sell it well.
Mm-hmm. This is original character, right? This is not one that was in the cartoons before, is it? Because it's not a name that I was familiar with.
No, it's all new. This is something they came up with for that mini-series.
Nice.
That's definitely cool. I like that.
Yeah. Expanding the universe. That's cool. That's nice that they're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, Mike.
Okay, I'm up again. This one is a Dark Horse book, and this is a collection of a series that we talked about a little bit when it was coming out in floppies. This is called Blackwood. Like I said, this is a trade, collects 1 through 4. And this was a story about a group of teenagers who are going off to college for the first time, and they have, for various reasons, based on their interesting pasts individually, have gone to a school called Blackwood College, which has some emphasis and some experience with the occult. And so they pretty much walk in the door and interesting stuff starts happening, and it gets very weird, and it is a whole lot of fun. I don't want to say it's funny. There are some funny moments in it. But it's actually a pretty serious story, and I thought it worked really well in terms of kind of the teenagers dealing with the occult sort of way. It was a lot of fun. I think you would not do wrong to check it out.
Yeah, glad to see this actually collected and give me a chance to go back and reread this. So
it is a strongly written story. I was extremely impressed when I first read this, and at first I had a little bit of trouble just trying to figure out who's who, what's what. But by I'm going to say halfway through the first issue, things made a lot of sense to me, and it was a good story.
Yeah, it was that first little bit was a bit of a whirlwind because they introduced a lot of characters all at once. But yeah, kind of it settled down a little bit, and then when cool and interesting stuff starts happening to them, it picks up nicely.
nice. I'm up next, and for my second pick, I am going with Fantastic Four Wedding Special #1. Yes, we're here again.
I was trying not to say anything about it.
The question is, does the wedding happen or not? We kind of discussed that a little bit pre-show. I don't think anybody was willing to take any kind of bets. But if you're not aware of what's going on, Ben Grimm, the Thing, proposed to his longtime girlfriend, Alicia Masters. So this is going to be a series of short stories. And just some of the names off the top: Gail Simone, Dan Slott, and Fred Hembeck. So we're going to have some Fred Hembeck in Marvel Comics again. That would be great. Be nice to see him doing some Marvel stuff again. But apparently we're going to be seeing the Bachelorette Party and all the other stuff. So we'll see where it goes. Like I said, no one's really taking any bets on whether the wedding's going to happen or not. But here we are. Should be fun. Whether it happens or not, I hope it's going to be fun.
God, and that is an issue, is so annoying. It's just we shouldn't. It shouldn't. It sucks. It sucks that it's come down to, wow, is there really going to be a wedding? Because it just shows that people have broken that story concept completely at this point, and it just sucks. So you know what? I hope there's a freaking wedding. I really do. Just because that would be the weird twist at this point.
Yeah. Broken. You say broken that concept. I would say broken that trust.
Yeah.
And yes, we're talking. We were promised 2 weddings this summer, and we got one, but it was not one of the ones that was even promoted.
Yeah, not even
So-
hinted at, really.
Even hinted at. So you're just got us as readers have a right to be a little gun shy or and be doubtful about things, but
Just a little cynical, maybe.
maybe a little cynical. But that's kind of the state that we're in.
We
All
can
right.
only hope now.
Yep.
But enough of that. Les, what is your second pick?
My second pick comes to you from Albatross Funny Books. This is Mega Ghost number 1. In the holiday spirit, I bring you the story of a junior occultist living in the haunted city of Dunwich Heights, and has summoned the power of Mega Ghost, a, quote, giant supernatural robot sworn to defend the world against the creepy things that go smash in the night. I think that's all that I need to say. I'm ready for this.
My thought for that was, yeah, that sells it right there. That sounds great. I don't know what you can add to that.
I don't know if it's going to be a comedy or if it's going to be serious.
Yes.
But it's got me hooked. I'm ready for this.
Mm-hmm.
It's from Albatross, so I suspect there will be a little of both. But sounds like
And-
fun.
And one of the covers is by Eric Powell. So, yeah.
Nice.
Alrighty, Mikey.
Okay, so since Liz ain't here, we're gonna do 3 apiece. So
That's true.
my third one, because we just keep on going here. My third book is a Dark Horse book, and it is called The Quantum Age. This is issue number 5, and this is from the world of Black Hammer. I actually might have said something about issue 1 of this. I don't remember, but I have really enjoyed pretty much all of the Black Hammer titles. Black Hammer is Jeff Lemire's take on its superhero universe, and the Quantum Age is actually set in the future. So this is kind of people who have taken up the mantles of the heroes from the main Black Hammer title, and so they're like descendants, or either descendants or just people who have inherited the stuff, and it's actually, like I said, I like the Black Hammer stuff. I think they've done a phenomenal job of building a universe very quickly that's it handles superheroes really well. They're deep characters, and they have interesting problems, and they're still, I mean, the main Black Hammer title, they're still trying to figure out what the hell's going on. That's really been a good title. But this is, they've got their problem in front of them, and they're sort of trying to get the group back together. It kind of hasn't been together for a while. Things are not necessarily going great in the future. I don't want to spoil too much here. I mean, this is issue 5, so there's some stuff going on there. It's going to be obvious, but yeah, I mean, especially if you can pick up the back issues on this and catch up, it's a really cool story.
Nice.
Oh, yes.
Alrighty. I guess I'm up again. So, for my third pick, if you're a long-time listener or just been doing a binge listen to our shows, well, first of all, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But you probably have picked up on the fact that I have become obsessed with Marvel's Epic Collection line, which usually puts together about 20 or so issues into one collection in chronological order for the most part. This one is a Punisher Epic Collection called Circle of Blood. And this is actually puts together the original miniseries and the first 10 issues of the first ongoing series. So this is right after all of his appearances in Spider-Man and the like. So they finally moved him on to his own book. I think the only thing that's not included on here would be a couple appearances in one of the Marvel magazines, which I can't remember exactly which one that was right now. But still, with art by Mike Vosberg and of course Mike Zeck, and stories written by Stephen Grant, Joe Duffy, and a few more. This introduced Microchip, his ally, his Frank's battles with Jigsaw and all that. So a lot of this stuff I have not read, so I'm picking this up to kind of just get in on the early days. The Spider-Man stuff I've read a couple of times, and some of the later stuff I have read, but this time period when they first kind of spread them, spun him off and try to see if how he would do on his own. Not all that familiar with, so it'll be kind of fun to kind of check this out.
Very cool.
Yep. Cool stuff.
Mm-hmm. Les.
All right. From IDW, I get to talk about a character that's been around for quite some time now. This is Paul Dini's Jingle Bell, The Homemaid's Tale. Jingle Bell is the teenage daughter of Santa Claus, is somewhat of a rebel. She's done several stories prior to this. And I'm just in because I have read the previous stuff. I've got a feeling that this is going to be a strong one-shot itself. So I'm asking for this one to be on my Christmas list right now.
Woohoo!
Sounds interesting.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty. Any special shout-outs or mentions this week? Obviously, once again, wish Liz a speedy recovery and hope that she can be back with us next week.
Yeah, get back here.
Yeah.
And get ready to be taunted a ton.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, Les is definitely saying, yes, the bus doesn't run over me for a bit. Yes, thank you.
Yes, please. Take the pressure.
All right, any other ones?
Well, we talk about old TV shows often enough that we should probably pass along our condolences for Ken Berry's friends and family since he passed away recently.
Mm-hmm.
He was kind of all over TV in the 60s and 70s and did a lot of really cool comedy work. So, he was 85 years old. So, still kind of sad though.
Yeah.
Yes, I thought he was very underrated as a comedic actor. He was very solid. God, he was just about everywhere, and yeah, especially 60s, 70s, maybe even early 80s with Mama's Family and that kind of thing. Yeah, it's kind of sad to see that, but he had a nice long life, and our thoughts and condolences are obviously with his family and friends. So, very much so.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
No.
Nothing here.
Okay. Alrighty. well, we'll move on to our regular shout-outs. Obviously, we will lead off with Mandy the Martyr for supplying the music to the Fellowship podcast. Awesome group of guys. We'll have a link in our show notes to check out some of their music if you're so inclined. Thank you once again, guys. Secondly, want to thank the men and women who make up the Pottern family on Twitter, who help us spread the word of the Fellowship by retweeting our links, our show links. You should definitely check them out. If you're looking for a podcast, just go to Twitter, do search hashtag Pottern Family, that's all one word, and just scroll, and whatever catches your fancy, download that episode and check it out, and who knows, you probably picked up a new show to listen to. Thank you guys for your support. And finally, you, dear listener, appreciate you downloading and listening to today's episode. We always appreciate your support as well. We would love to hear from you. If you have a comment, question, observation, complaint, whatever, we would please contact us. And there are several ways you can do that. You can go to the website, www.thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, and go to the About Us page, and there's a contact form you can fill out there. There's also email at thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. That's our email address. You can send a quick note that way if you can so incline. You can contact us through social media, and by all means, please follow us. On Facebook, The Fellowship of the Geeks, and on Twitter, we are at Fellowship Geeks. If you'd like to follow our individual Twitter accounts, Mike can be found at Mikey Geek. Liz can be found at Newman_L. And I can be found at TomTC Geek. And wherever you download, listen to our episodes, whether it's iTunes, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, we would greatly appreciate it if you would rate our show. And if you have the extra time, a review would be awesome. Very much appreciated. Any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
Just thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you again, everybody, once again for listening. Appreciate your support. And until next time, read more comics and support your local stores.
We thank you for listening to the show. Comments, suggestions, and questions can be sent to email at thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can follow us on Facebook at The Fellowship of the Geeks and on Twitter at Fellowship Geeks. Until next time,